All right, back in the basement again today. I want to do a quick update on the Juggernaut AI training program that I am running leading up to a meet on May 1st. I've just completed my week 6 of this training cycle, and that was a deload week. So normally I've been showing you a bunch of lifts, going through each day, talking about my top set. I'm not going to really do this particular video. Instead, I want to just talk about deloads, but I will show you some clips throughout the course of the week. Basically, it's the same stuff that I've been doing for the previous 4 weeks at just a lower intensity and lower volume when it comes to all the actual training. So the main thing I want to address in this video is the deload week. One of the things that I see from people is that they're not happy with how often it happens in this program. Basically, you're taking a deload on the most part every 4th week. I say that because depending on when your meet is, depending on when you're setting up your program and what you're training for, you might find that it's every 3 weeks in some instances, not very often, or every 5th week in some instances, which was the case for me on this particular week. This was my 5th training week of this particular block, and it was a deload. So I had 4 normal training weeks leading up to that. And you can kind of see when you take a look at my overall view of my training program, it's because where I started versus where my meet was, it couldn't give me a full block. So it just extended 1. Now to that point, in the past, when I took a break from lifting because I felt like I needed it, when I first started training, I would just take a week off every now and then. It's very few and far between because I just hated being out of the gym, but that's what I would do, right? I would take a week off of training. I'd come back and try to work through some of that rust. Eventually, I started learning about deloads, which for me, a deload is a drop in intensity and volume, and it's meant as an active form of recovery. Because again, when I took a week off previously, I'd come back, I'd feel like crap. It would take me another week or so to get back in the groove of things, if you will. And I found through taking deloads, what I could do is I could still be in the gym, which I liked, but I could do it to a point where I wasn't crushing myself and I was able to recover. And I found that I didn't actually need any time off and I wasn't sustaining any injuries or things of that nature. And I really got familiar with deloads as part of the Wendler 5-3-1 system. Now for that, however, for Wendler, a lot of times for deloads, it's like a 50% reduction in intensity. So it's very, very light. And for the most part, it's every 4th or every 8th week, depending on where you are in the program. As you get deeper into it, it tends to be every 4th week. And for the Juggernaut AI, I actually like the frequency of deloads here being every 4th week or so. And some might say that that's, tough to do. That's too frequent, too often, and they feel like they could push themselves harder. And truth be told, you probably could, but the problem is you're not thinking long-term. And that's one of the things I like about taking a look at the overall program breakdown, where it shows you your complete training cycle from day 1 up to a test date, which in some cases is like 6 months down the road. You can see exactly what it's doing in terms of volume, in terms of frequency, in terms of intensity. And for me, when I take a look at my deloads, and in this case, I'm looking at basically 3 deloads in the course of this training cycle. Yes, they happen every 4th week on average, but if you take a look at where the intensity is for each of those deloads, it's actually higher than each previous deload. So for instance, on this particular week, on my deload work, I was still doing, in some cases, up to like 75% of my 1 rep max, which is still relatively high, all things considered. So it's not like that 50% reduction like you'd see in Wendler. And again, it gives you a range of numbers to pick from on both the low and the high end. So if you're feeling really good, you can push those numbers. And in fact, you can exceed those numbers if you really wanted to. Again, this is more of just a guided training program for you. But the problem is what you'll find is as you get deeper into a training cycle, that will probably end up catching up to you. And the goal here of this training block and these training cycles are to keep you fresh and to have you in the best position for the last day, which is the test out. So yeah, you might be feeling good now, 6 weeks in, but if you have another 6 to 8 weeks on top of that, how are you gonna feel if you're skipping the times when you're supposed to be using that as active recovery? Now, interestingly enough, this week, Jeff Nippard released a deload video, which I did not watch just because I didn't want to be swayed by what he said, but I guarantee you, him and I are probably going to say the same things. He's just probably going to have a lot more scientific backing behind it and probably put it much more eloquently than I am. But what I look at here is take, for example, my deload this week, which I'm highlighting right here on the screen. If you take a look at my intensity of this week, it's actually the same as when I started this training block. So the intensity hasn't dropped at all. The volume just dropped in order for me to, again, use that as active recovery. And even on in my next deload, which is going to be 4 weeks from now, that's almost as high as my max effort sessions from this particular training block. So for me, what I do is I wrap my head around a deload like this: active recovery, right? Yes, it is a drop, usually in intensity. It gives you the option. If you don't want to take it, it'll still give you a fairly high range, like I mentioned already, in the mid 70 percentages. But also that drop in volume just so you can feel better about yourself. Again, you should have the end goal in mind, which is your test out day, and not just how you feel, 4 weeks into a 12-week program, because you have to really keep it long-term view. And I think if you do that, and I think if you run the program for the most part how it's suggested, you'll find that you'll have the best results. And that's coming from someone who's run it now for about 14 or 15 months. I'm still learning the things, but deloads for me are one of the things I look forward to, just because, again, I push myself so hard during the normal training weeks that deload for me is great because it gets me refreshed and back in the gym to hit even more PRs. So hopefully this video helped. If you have more questions on deloads, leave them in the comments section below. If you're interested in running this program, I do have a discount code. I leave it in all the description boxes below. But again, happy to answer any questions if you have them. And next week, we'll talk about accessories, picking them, and what I choose to run on the Juggernaut AI program. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.